You think you have gifted kid syndrome? I was told by my therapist that all of my problems come from my intelligence. Okay, before this video starts, I just want to give a huge thank you to Will Wood. In my last video, I talked about how much I like Will Wood, how much I appreciate his art and his content, and how much it speaks to me. And there's a bit of an issue with my comments. I've been having that trouble with YouTube lately where my comments have just been automatically getting disabled. I'm not sure what that's about. Very long, very sweet comment on the Unity post advertised in that video, and I just want to give a giant thank you, especially since he commented when the video had like 70 views, so it's kind of wild that he even saw it in the first place, and it meant a lot to me. Wood is an artist that I really look up to. Honestly, like, the kind of art that he makes is the kind of art that I hope that I get to be able to make. And yeah, I really appreciated that. Back to the video where I talk about how much I hate the education system. I'm a gifted kid. I've been taking honors classes since middle school. I'm in accelerated math, and I took calculus last year in junior year. Thankfully, I'm free of math this year, but suffice to say, I'm a gifted kid. I have a 3.7 GPA. I'm like in the top 100 kids of my class, which sounds bad until you take into consideration that there's like 1,000 kids at my school, and I'm like the number 54, I think? I don't know. I'm no valedictorian, but I like honors classes. Gifted. And that has not always gone well for me. I used to be so terrified of checking my grades that my heart rate would literally go up every time I opened them. In freshman year, I got super depressed and demotivated because of the strain in school, and that resulted in me not studying for any of my freshman finals and not doing as well as I probably could have. It's now the epic highs and lows of high school football. School has always been a complicated subject for me, and that's because I actually really love learning. I genuinely really love learning and reading and analysis. I think you could tell. I made an entire video just talking about, I would love to do so many videos that are just analysis about the themes and content of stuff because it's so fascinating to me. I really enjoy it. The favorite class that I've ever taken so far is AP Research, which is a largely self-motivated project. Remember that Keith Haring survey that I posted a while ago? That was what that was. I love learning. The whole fucking point of me being able to make video essays is because I genuinely love thinking about these things and I love analyzing things. It's proof of that. I love learning, but I don't love school. I believe education has value, and I believe learning has value, but I do not believe that the way school is structured is designed to actually accelerate those topics. And you know, I know that's been a talking point for years, but you know, I'm a self-centered teenager and I want to talk about it. School has done nothing but stifle my love of learning. I've not read for fun anything that wasn't fan fiction or characters that I already know I established and liked in years, and I kind of resent learning now. I haven't even looked at my summer reading so far. I kind of resent the science that I used to enjoy, and that is coming from somebody who did multiple STEM camps and even went to space camp. And the same is true with history. I love talking about history. I love making the connections between then and now and talking about societal problems. I'm somebody who's very socially minded, or at least I try to be, and I think learning history is a very important part of that. I fucking hated history. comes down to the fact that school is not based on learning, it's based on curriculum. Students are not given the educational freedom to explore their interests and then just stifling their potential. We have to write essays analyzing books, which maybe wouldn't be so bad, except the way that we're taught to analyze is only through a narrow lens. We're given like a list of topics through the lens of which we're supposed to talk about. For example, Huck Finn. We read Huck Finn, and that was a book that I enjoyed. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about Huck Finn in context to today's world, and how while Huck Finn had narrative and social importance in the time period that it was written in, talking about it like it still has relevance in today's time, I think is counterproductive, because ultimately it still perpetuates ideas that are outdated, and it is an example of a white savior trope. And while I understand the origins of white savior tropes, it was sort of a way to get the people on the fence and the people questioning Southern culture to start to empathize with the Black struggle. And I understand why the white savior narrative exists as a trope. But in today's world, I don't think it has any relevance. And that's something I wanted to write about. But we're allowed to write about the book, the plot, the characters. Topics that we are allowed to write about are so often limited. Sometimes teachers give you a list of potential topics that you are allowed to write about, and you're not allowed to stray from the lens. Teachers will give example theses that oftentimes students will be encouraged to copy or base their theses off of. Half the time we're just reciting memorized information or just writing down a bunch of quotes that we think prove a very simple thesis. And it's absurd. I like discussion, but that requires a level of complexity. And I don't think teachers are willing to acknowledge that students will have complex thoughts, even if they're teenagers. For example, math. Learning math is not supposed to be about just the actual material. It's about learning different logic processes and pushing your mind to be able to think in different ways to make better connections. And learning history is supposed to be about making connections between events in the past and the present, and seeing how they lead to the modern day problems that we still face, and understanding how history exists in today's world. Learning English is supposed to be about finding patterns and seeing deeper meanings, and being able to communicate what you want to talk about in an effective and coherent manner. That's not what school is. By far, the classes that I have thrived the most in were the classes that have given me this freedom. Because, and I think this goes unsaid a lot, kids are smarter than you give them credit for. Whether it be TV shows getting canceled or censored because they're too mature for young audiences, like in the case of Infinity Train that was deemed too adult, or school only restricting you to the curriculum or the books that it allows. Everywhere, all of the time, we see that media is censored for kids. And the way that kids are treated by adults constantly undermines their independence. Other criticisms to be made about school, there's the fact that it was based on a factory mentality, the fact that actually the architecture of many schools is inspired by prisons, and that similar psychology continues to affect the mindset of students who are in those schools. There's the fact that the curriculums that were given are restricted to censor genocide and racism, and it all comes down to preserving a childhood innocence that no longer exists. Kids know shit, especially in today's world, where the internet is a vast exploration of knowledge. And most of my knowledge about the digital world and most of the things that I care about, that I've learned about, have come from the digital space. So let them use their knowledge and let them push boundaries. And I'm not saying all of it will be good, because kids are still kids and kids are learning. That is the point of education. We are learning these processes. We are learning these communication ways. And they're going to fuck up because kids are stupid and make stupid arguments. But they still need to be allowed the room to make them. Letting kids freely express their thoughts is the gateway to process. There's a lot of talk about how school and education is supposed to be this gateway to democracy. And while I have a lot of thoughts about that, especially given the nature of schools to censor so much we learn about our country, if you truly want democracy and if you truly want an educated youth, you have to give them the freedom to be educated. And you have to accept the fact that kids have the maturity to grapple with and to learn about very complicated and very deep subjects. This is why I should have been allowed to write an essay absolutely tearing apart the writings of Charles Dickens. I have never hated a book more than Great Expectations. And on God, Miss Simonides, I'm gonna fucking write about it.